We're spending the off season here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, talking to the biggest guests that we can find. We got a big one this week. We are joined by the director of football personnel and the host of Up Close and Personnel, a podcast that is so sublimely titled that I'm actually angry. We're joined by Alex Brown. First and foremost, congratulations on the podcast title. That's just the best.
I appreciate it. It was definitely one of those where been thinking about it for a while, and you throw it out to, you don't want to, it's kind of like when you have a good idea and you don't want to just throw it out there until it's fully formed. So finally decided to, COVID pushed me over the edge.
So you are the director of football recruiting for Rice. And I am very interested. This is going to sound like a dumb question because it is. What is it that you would say you do? I think there's people who see that title floating around and they think they have an idea of what that is, but what is it that you would say that is your job?
My job is to really oversee our player identification and player acquisition process. So the difference between us and the NFL is the fact that, they have to say yes to us. So it's half of the job is the evaluating side, the recruiting side, and half of the job is getting them to say yes. And so that's a lot of the presentation and the social media and the interaction. And so I got an awesome crew of 4 interns that work with me, and graphic designers that I work with. And kind of the way I look at it is, you're old enough to appreciate this, but the NBA's played a lot differently now, right? Like Steph Curry's, making a bazillion threes. But back when we were, growing up, Andre Miller was a not sexy, but he was a really effective point guard, right? Just find the open man passing the ball. So I kind of look at recruiting directors in that sense where, if they can have the ability to be a difference maker in a relationship, absolutely use them. But my job is to make sure that my coaches are prepared to go on the road. My coaches are prepared with names, information on players, and I know my strengths. So I'm going to surround myself with assistants and interns that help me with maybe my deficiencies on, learning the different social media tactics or, ways we can be creative. I know my strength is on the personnel side, on the numbers, on the evaluating. So I think you have to have a lot of self-awareness for it, but also keep the mindset of, it's my job to get the ball to the open coach, the guy who needs to be the closer, so to speak, and really just stay in, lock in step with Coach Bloomgren on numbers, vision, big picture. What does our team need to be looking like from not just a talent standpoint, but culture and the type of people you bring in. So I would just say it's a player acquisition position. So whoever we bring into the building, that falls under my jurisdiction.
Is there anything even approaching the concept of an average day for you? And if there is, what does an average day look like in your world?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit different. I really like to start my day off the right way. So I'm up actually at 4:30 to, cause I'm a big coffee guy, get my quiet time in, get some reading in, catch up on The Athletic, Dave Campbell's, I'm checking ESPN. So I kind of have this buffer of an hour and a half before even getting to the building of okay, I know that the minute I step into the building, I'm going to be pulled in a lot of different directions. So I'm going to carve out from about 4:30 till about 7:30. That gets me a chance to center myself, plan out my day, figure out what I want to do with my interns, what I need to do with my coaching staff. And I really kind of build it off of what our football schedule is like. So for instance, our coaches are doing, working on Arkansas, working on Houston for the beginning of next season. So they'll be meeting in the morning. So I'm going to use that time to have a meeting with my interns. I'm going to use that time to make recruiting calls, evaluate kids, update numbers, plan out itineraries for whether it's the summer events that are going to go on. When we get freshmen on campus, kind of onboarding them. So I'm going to use that morning time for me, for recruiting, for operational, logistical. And then when we get to the afternoon, that's the time I carve aside where I literally just treat it like a coaching block. I'm going to go office to office. Hey, what are your conversations like with this kid? Because each day of the week we have a different kind of, mode of the day or theme of the day where like Monday we're passing out kind of updates on prospects, who we need to have them get on the phone with. On Tuesdays we're going to pass out rights, Wednesdays, so on and so forth. So like every single day kind of has its own kind of thread and vibe to it. And I treat my afternoons as like my chance to get with my coaching staff. And I treat my mornings of like working with my recruiting staff. So that's a
So,
typical day.
okay. Waking up at 4:30, so you are a sociopath, confirmed. Let me ask you about the the process as it's changed under COVID. You know, that's one thing we've talked with a lot of folks over the course of the last year about how their job has changed. From your perspective, obviously the dead period, extending until now up until June 1. Um, has it just turned your entire world upside down as far as the way that you do your job, or is it still kind of we have our vision, we're going to go execute our vision?
It's kind of, steady as she goes. You have less data. So that's the hard part. And so my athletic director, Joe Galgard, gave us a really good book to read. It's called Thinking in Bets. And, it kind of goes to the basis of like, you might have 60% of information on this prospect and 40% on this prospect. Okay, so how do we reconcile that? Like, you got to try to figure out, okay, what's the expected value of this kid based on what we know, and then prioritize like positionally, like, 40 time, I'm not going to be hung up on not having a verified speed on alignment, but I do need to have a verified height, weight. I need to know what he's pushing around in the weight room. And I think it puts more emphasis on the recruiting calls to coaches and people connected with the kid. And you honestly have more time to do that.
Mhm.
I feel like COVID kind of benefits us because we have a model of we're only going to extend, committable offers. So we're not going to offer 10 guys for one spot. If you run the numbers on us last year, like 1 out of every 4 kids we signed was offered. So that's important to us that we really know as much information as possible on the kids. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, and actually that brings up an interesting point. And Greg Powers, our recruiting analyst, brought this up to me. He goes, one thing I've noticed from Rice recently is that they have worked to make getting a Rice offer a big deal. Going and so that if you get that Rice offer, that's not just another offer that goes on the pile. I take it that is from what you were saying, I take it that is a thought out strategy. That is not something that has come by happenstance. That's something you guys have thought out and have a strategy towards making more special.
Yeah, and we really do believe we have the best on and off the field opportunity, the best of both worlds. I mean, you see a couple, high academic schools preach that, but when it comes to playing FBS ball and going and playing at Arkansas, going and playing at Texas, going and playing at USC, having a top 10 education nationally, world ranked education, and being in the city of Houston where you have all this opportunity, business, energy, medical, we really feel like we have an incredible product. So why would we dilute that by having so many offers that we can't even bring all those guys into the building? So, you kind of, you got to draw people in, right? And like, you got to find out how realistic, and maybe not how realistic is the right word, but maybe how truly interested is somebody in the educational piece, in how difficult it is in our program. Cause it's not easy. Like our hashtag intellectual brutality is there for a reason. We run a really tight ship. We run NFL systems on offense and defense. We're a really physical practicing team. Like we'll go 30 plus periods. Like practice is no joke here. It's not, just rolling out the ball. And the education side, right? So getting into Rice is really difficult, and it weeds out a lot of players that I would have otherwise loved off of film. But what it does is it changes the type of kid you bring in. One, I can be very, very focused and targeted with the kids I recruit. And so my interactions with a recruit that are on a day-to-day or every other day or week-to-week basis feel different and resonate differently with a kid that maybe has 15 offers, but of those 15 offers, he, hears maybe once a month or once every other week, because, quite frankly, it's hard to keep up with 150 offers. So that's what we see. That's how it's helped us in the past, really for me, the last 2 cycles, because I'm now going in year 3. And I know it's really important to Bloom because, that model worked for him at Stanford as well.
Can you take me through the process of of identifying a kid, getting getting things, pointed the right direction, understanding this is a guy that you really like, and then is it a matter of like presenting it to Coach Bloomgren? What's the process like as far as I think I like this kid, I like his film. What's the next steps from there?
Yeah, so you get guys from all over the place. Like everybody asks me, like, "Oh, where do you get them from? Do you only get them from high school coaches? Do you get them from lists?" Should I get it from everywhere? Sometimes you'll pull up a kid off Twitter. So whether it's social media, a recruiting service that you use, a recommendation from a high school coach. Sometimes you even get recommendations from other colleges, which has been really helpful because like a lot of times I can't take a kid academically, but I love the kid, so I'm going to call up Joe Price or like anybody that I'm tied in with and have a relationship with. I'm like, hey, you should check this kid out. That's the cool part of the personnel world. But say you find a kid and you like him, and that identification piece is much different than the evaluation process because you're one scanning the height, weight, speed, the measurables. Does he pass that threshold? Okay. So does he have a minimum requirement when it comes to like measurables, physical traits, because that's the most important thing, right? You can't live in a world of exceptions. Then you go to the highlight tape, and you don't live in the highlight tape, but that helps as a screen, as a filter. So if you think of it like really everything's kind of funneling down so that by the time it gets to Bloomgren and we talk about it as a staff, we've already cut the weed out. We've already cut the fat. So the first like really process for us is always calling the high school coach. We really want to ask. We have 5 questions that we always ask. I'm not going to go into detail on like every checkpoint that we do, but we do a character background check. It goes to the support staff coach. So like, it's not just the coordinator signing off on the kid. It's not just me. It's going to be the GA or QC. He's going to funnel that list even smaller. Then it gets to the position coach. He does a full-on evaluation of profile tape, which is, we're not going to just evaluate 10 plays and say, yeah, he's great at, he's got great ball production or he's got great hips. Well, of course it's going to look great on the first 10 clips, right? So like we're going to go through, my staff breaks it up. I have 2 on offense, 2 on defense. And so, you'll get 3 to 4 games, good, bad, everything in between, special teams value. So you want to get as clear a picture as possible so that when the position coach is evaluating, he knows what he's dealing with. He knows, what the type of player he is, what fits him best, if he's a scheme fit, and if he's got an upside. So you can tell a lot just from that profile tape. And then it goes to the coordinator. Me and the coordinator have a conversation, and that generally kind of determines whether or not we're going to go on a kid. Because once you get into the staff room and we watch as a full staff and Coach Bloomgren's asking questions about players, he's going to go straight to the coordinator, right? Like, Brian Smith, you're the GM of the defense. Marquez Tuiasosopo, like you're the GM of the offense. So like, do you want this kid? Where does he fit? Can we take him? And so a lot of times we'll come away from those meetings and you'll like a player, but you're not ready to offer him because you still have a committable offer on the table for somebody else. So those are kind of like the inner workings of what it looks like.
Thorough, very thorough, but I would expect nothing else, nothing less from the Rice staff, knowing what we know about them. How often are there disagreements on kids? How often is there a kid you're like, I really, really like this kid, and then maybe somebody else, maybe the OC sees something different, or maybe Coach Bloomgren. How often are there disagreements, or does it get to the point where you guys understand what's important, what everyone's looking for?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of understands what we're looking for. From a disagreement standpoint, I use that as a learning opportunity because, like, for me, if I don't know why you don't like this kid, then I'm not going to be able to bring you any players you do like, because I'll probably keep bringing the same players, right? So it kind of acts like a self-corrector, right? So as I bring him, bring our O-line coach 10 guys, he said, these 5 guys don't fit. And I'm like, okay, why? I really liked X, Y, and Z. And he tells me, okay, I don't like his second step. I don't like this. So then I can tune and update kind of what our process is from that point. And in those staff meetings, it's more of like questions. It's not like straight up disagreements. It's like, can we answer this question about him? Like, do we have a verified height? Do we have a verified weight? And so you kind of create these checklist questions. And as you go through the process, now we know what fits and what doesn't. I would probably say, like, when I first got here, there were definitely more disagreements. And I think that's healthy. Like, I think that the more people are involved as far as like taking ownership and like getting the best players possible, The better questions you're going to ask, the more thorough you're going to be. And the more we're going to get on the same page, because you're just going to actually communicate those things versus just saying, yeah, we don't want this kid. Like, hashing it out has actually been really helpful over the years.
Do you have a favorite success story? Do you have a guy that maybe you identified that had flown under the radar, a guy like that you're like, oh man, this is like, now when you see him in the uniform, you're feeling you're jacked up.
Yeah, well, Kalen Griffin's one,
Mhm.
because I had been watching him since his freshman year, and like I had brought him up at my previous stop, and I wanted us to go on him. And you get over to Rice, and it's a new situation, and we're looking for a back, and that fits that mold. And you make that call to the head coach, you make that call to the kid, and it resonates a little bit differently. And to be able to really get to know a kid over the course of his junior and senior year fully was really cool. And then to see him perform like he did that first year, that was really cool. But like, I would probably say my favorite find is really this last class with JoJo Jean. He's a safety out of Florida. We're projecting him at corner, and so this kid hits me up on Instagram and Twitter, and I know nothing of the kid. We haven't recruited really the school because it's a smaller Florida school. And he's like, hey, I saw Marcus Williams. He's a kid that signed with us from Hoover, Alabama, really good player. He's like, he's an absolute baller. Like, I want to be a part of this. Like, check out my film. Here's my transcript, all that stuff. So, okay, cool. You watch the film, you're like, damn, I wish this guy was playing corner because we need a cornerback. And I text him that, and he says, hey, I played cornerback my junior year. And so he sends me the junior tape. And so it's kind of one of those, you go into the DC's office, and me and Brian Smith are having a conversation. We're like, he's not exactly what we want, but this guy's just a really good football player. Like, we just got to go get him. No different than it was like Gabe Taylor playing 1 year of football the year prior. And, we're like, he's not quite as big as what we want. Like, what do we do with him? And it's like, dude, every single play is a pick six. You just got to take good football players. So I know I just gave you three names, but those are kind of ones that stick out with me.
One thing that I've in diving into to our data here is, in the class of 2021, it was something like 31 in every 3 kids signed in state, across the nation. They signed in state. You guys were, as far as high school kids, you guys are up around 55%, 56%. I know you just said, let's go get good kids, good players, plain and simple. Let's go get good football players. Is there a decided motivation to go get Texas kids, to go and make sure you're keeping Lone Star State kids at home if you can?
Absolutely. Because the biggest thing for us is like, we got to have people that know the Rice brand and that know the value of it and that want to play in front of their friends and family. Like, those are just added factors in the decision. If you remove those, like, then it becomes an uphill battle. And now you're going, apples to apples versus actually having like a competitive advantage over an out-of-state competitor. So I don't know, like, just for example, like Ethan Onyanwa, we're able to beat out a Vanderbilt offer because he wants to stay in the city of Houston. His dad knows the value, as an engineering guy, like, knows the value of our degree. He knows the value of being in the city of Houston energy wise. So I think it just gives you such a like leg up on out-of-state people. Cause as you know, like, everybody's rushing the state of Texas. Year in and year out, like I say, like, man, we really get over recruited, and it just more people start pouring in. And at the end of the day, like, that the talent is here, and there's no reason for us to start outward and work inward. Like, we really comb the state first, find out where the deficiencies are. So like, hey, outside receivers with this size and this speed, like, they're all chopped up at the guys that we would grade as offerable. So let's start to expand our view nationally. And then that's where kind of your academic filters kind of help you comb it to the guys that you can actually recruit. So I would just say, yeah, I mean, it gives you such a leg up on outside guys.
What's a Saturday in the fall like for you then? You're a guy who a lot of your work doesn't, is not, you're not calling plays. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're not out there making assignments or things like that. What is game day like for you?
So we talking 2019 or 2020?
Yeah, let's go 2019. Let's go normal days. Let's project positivity into the world.
Okay. Projecting positivity in the world. I always have it's like my script. So the list of my guys that are coming in. So I sort them by commits, offers, close to offers, targets, underclassmen. And I always try to keep like different sections so I can add notes constantly as I'm having conversations with them. And I kind of set it up to where, my staff is really running check-in. They're really running the operations logistics of it. My whole job is to have touch points with all of the top guys that are there. I want to talk to the kid. I want to talk to mom, dad, the coaches there. And I want to like have more than just a, hey, welcome to Rice. Hope you have a good time. Like, no, like, how's your week? Like, what's going on with you in your life? Like, how's school going? How's like whatever your injury is, or if there's anything off the field, like I can kind of probe and ask those questions and have those conversations and get stuff that are really hard over the phone, are really hard over the text. And for me, like this is my chance to recruit because I don't get to go on the road. So this is my game day, so to speak. And so, you have a lot of time pre-game to spend with these guys and, tour around facilities. What we would do, like say if we had, an afternoon game and we had two guys that we really wanted to like lock in that weekend. Okay, well, maybe they're on just an unofficial visit. So I'm going to tell them to get there. Hey, come up here at 9 o'clock, let your coach know that you're going to miss, film study or whatever. Like, let's first cross that bridge and then get over here. We're going to tour you around the campus. We're going to tour you around the facility, get you a photo shoot, kind of really lay out the red carpet. And because, Rice Village is part of Rice University's campus, we just hop in a golf cart and go over to Torchy's Tacos. So it really feels like an official visit as an unofficial visit. So you kind of get 2-for-1 situation. And at the end of that day, at the end of that game, I'm going to schedule time aside after Bloom's presser and we sit in his office and we have a one-on-one. Win, loss, draw. He always makes time to do that because, he's so front facing and loves to, interact with those families. So it was really fun. Like that 2019 year, that's really the reason we signed DJ Arkansas was that season. He came up for like 2 or 3 games, spent a lot of time around him. He knew that he was the number one guy on our board from the jump. And, we get him a year and a half later. I think the work you put in on juniors is what pays off on signing day. Like September 1's so huge. So 2020 is a little different. It was more of like Instagram live, FaceTiming kids, texting guys during halftime. Not quite the same.
Okay, so there are probably a number of folks out there who are players out there who want to get recruited, who are looking to get recruited, and I know we want to be careful of barriers here, but my question for you is if I'm a recruit, looking to get noticed, looking to get identified as to get on your radar, what are things that I can do? What are you looking for? What is important for you to see in recruits as far as getting noticed?
Well, number one, the recommendation from the head coach of their school, like, that weighs way more heavily than spamming my Twitter account. Like I'll post something about my family or like a tough moment, and somebody replies, "Hey, coach, I'm 6'1", 220 pounds, around a 4'4".
Dude,
Like it's the worst way.
I imagine your mentions are a disaster.
They are.
I know my mentions can be a disaster. I can't even imagine yours.
So what helps a lot of times is when kids are interested and they tell their coach and their coach contacts me, that helps a ton. The more you're able to make like traction where, you post your highlight film or whatever, and it gets retweeted by maybe a teammate or somebody or a coach, that always pops up on my feed. Email is like, you get spammed a lot. So I guess like from the start, like working through your high school coach is really important. That's the best way for a kid to get on anybody's radar because your coach is going to be connected and tied to different people. Right. And really what we look for is guys that really want to be great in everything, like on and off the field. So like you got to be an A and B student. Like you got to be an A and B student, top half of your class. Like test scores kind of out of the window for this cycle and last cycle, but you got to really test highly. And, like the toughness side of it, like the seeker of action, like I'm going to watch the game film. So just understand that on the front end. So I would just say like toughness and really a competitiveness to be their best self on and off the fields. That's the number one thing we're looking for.
You in your past life, you wrote for Bleacher Report, you worked for NFL Network, things like that. You worked in the unwashed, filthy media.
Yes.
Do you miss it a little bit? Do you miss us a little bit?
No, I don't. So there are times. So like I would say this, I don't miss being told to write an article about Tim Tebow, and I love Tim Tebow, but there's something really refreshing or rewarding when you can kind of choose your own way, like choose your own path from a media standpoint. So like I'm sure it's that way for you. Like you get to talk about the things you want to talk about. That's why like the podcast medium is so awesome for me.
Yeah.
And every time I've thought about it, it's just I remember how hard it was for me to get into sports. And when I say sports, like it was so hard to get into the University of Houston as an unpaid intern, just scraping along the bottom of the floor, right? So maybe in a later life, I might return. But for now, like, winning the Peach Bowl that first year at Houston, I mean, I hope I didn't peak too early in life. That really just sticks out to me, and I want to get back to that place. And the having stake in the game makes it that much more fun. That's just me though.
No, I can get that. I'm slogging along here, so you don't need to tell me. Yeah, get out of media as soon as you can. Finally, let's get you in trouble with the final question, which is the big man, Mike Bloomgren, who's been on our program a couple of times, was a tight end at Culver Stockton College. Have you been able to get your hands on some Mike Bloomgren tight end film? And if so, do you have a scouting report?
Golly, you just gave me some good homework. I have not seen that.
Oh, okay.
I have not seen that.
Okay. So we need to find some. I think that's a joint effort. Let's this feels like our powers combining. This feels like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man shaking hands really slowly and stuff. We're gonna find that footage of him, and we're gonna bring you back to break it down.
I have seen Lucas Reed, our quarterback GA. He's a baller. He's a little undersized, lefty. Actually plays really well in the pocket. He's got a high release for a guy who's sub 5'8", 5'9". But a good athlete, competitor. Took his team pretty far in the state playoffs. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're on it. We have an assignment now. He's Alex Brown. He is the director of football recruiting for the Rice Owls, and of course the host of Up Close and Personnel, the podcast, which you should subscribe to. Alex, really appreciate your time, my man, and best of luck on the recruiting trail.
Thank you, Greg. See you.